the loaves beside the sea. Beyond the sacred page, I seek thee, Lord. My spirit longs for thee, O living Word. Bless thou the truth, dear Lord, to me, as thou didst bless the bread by Galilee. Then shall all bondage cease, all fetters fall, and I shall find my peace, my all in open thy word of truth, that I may see thy message written clear and plain for me. Then in sweet fellowship, walking with thee, thine image on my life engraved will be. Oh, send thy Spirit, Lord, now unto me, that he may touch my eyes and make me see. Show me the truth concealed within thy word, and in thy book revealed I see the Lord. I see the Lord. I see the
A floating church on the Amazon, a church plant in Romania, and the sights and sounds of Tokyo. All this and much more coming up next. Hello and welcome to Mission 360. I'm Gary Krause. Today's program is coming to you from Tokyo, the largest metropolitan area in the world. According to some estimates, some 36 million people live in the greater Tokyo area. And in a densely populated area such as Tokyo, I guess it's somewhat natural that it is also the vending machine capital of the world. It's estimated that there is one vending machine for every 23 people. And in these vending machines, which are obviously here 24/7, you can find drinks, you can find hamburgers, you can find chocolate, you can find toys, you can find popcorn, the list goes on. Well, we'll be looking more at Tokyo on today's program, but first up, let's travel to the Amazon to see what has been purchased through your 13 Sabbath offerings, a floating church.
The Amazon River is a source of food and income for many. As you travel along the river, you can see many communities along the banks. Here you will find 1/4 of our planet's fresh water supply. That's why boats are necessary for transportation. There are entire communities with either no knowledge of the Bible or no churches. Adventists here found a fitting way to reach more than 10,000 communities. Thanks to your past contributions to the 13th Sabbath offering, the floating church was built. This custom boat is a church that carries the pastor's family. It often works alongside the Adra Lucero boats to provide health care and hope to people.
The main goal behind the Floating Church project is to reach places we typically find hard to visit. The Floating Church offers an infrastructure for a pastor or Bible worker, a captain, and others to live aboard. There's also an auditorium where people from the community can come to listen to the Word of God.
The Floating Church has an auditorium that seats 120 people. It's a comfortable space for people to come and learn about God.
I know what difficulties they face and how hard it is for the gospel message to reach the distant communities along the Amazon River. This touched me in a special way. I was moved by the prospect of this project. It was encouraging to imagine how far this boat could go to reach the riverside families.
This boat also has onboard apartments for the crew. Reno Guerra is both the pastor and the captain of the boat. He and his wife, Natalia, accepted God's call to bring hope and healing to the region.
As soon as the boat docks, it's received with a lot of joy. People are happy to see the Floating Church because it is a beautiful and unique boat. Pastor Reno sounds the horn to catch the attention of the people who come curiously to look. So the pastor invites the people to a church program. He enters a community where the work already has begun and calls the people to come inside the Floating Church. The boat is usually docked for 60 days as they talk about family, health, and community well-being.
In the first year of service, 2 new churches were established through the Floating Church. This past June, the Gutierrez Church opened as a result of the Missionary project.
This is the first daughter church plant of the Floating Church project. The church that floats is the mother of all the traditional church structures that are built along the banks of the Amazon River.
Indeed, miracles are happening along the Amazon.
We noticed that this project changes what people think about God and about the Adventist Church. There is change in their society. People become calmer, happier, more content, and united. The church helps the community to realize how they can work together as one body to develop social projects for themselves.
Irmão, com certeza, muitas alegrias.
I believe many souls will be reached through this boat. This boat can reach places where even radio signals don't travel to reach hearts.
We pray that this will be managed and used well for the gospel to reach the farthest places in the Amazon.
We have the opportunity to navigate rivers and oceans as part of our mission to reach unreached people groups. Please pray for the Floating Church and the many missionaries involved in flooding the Amazon with hope. And thank you for supporting projects like these through the 13th Sabbath offering.
My guest is Pastor Doug Venn, and Pastor Doug works with me in the Office of Adventist Mission. He's the Director for Mission to the Cities for the General Conference and also Director of our Global Mission Urban Center. Doug, thanks so much for joining us.
It's an honor to be with you, Gary.
Yeah, so what we're going to talk about now is the challenge of Tokyo. I mean, give our viewers some sort of a view of the challenge factor. What are we facing with a city such as Tokyo?
Yeah. Well, the Adventist work in any of the cities is, we have the opportunity to expand it. And so it is, again, with the situation in Tokyo. We did some analysis, and every church, imagine every church trying to reach over 2 million people.
Wow.
And so that's part of the challenge, and that's why I'm excited. We have a new initiative that's going to be looking at changing that.
Terrific. Now, Dr. Ng, who is my boss, the Secretary of the General Conference, came up with this idea of Mission Unusual. What do we mean by this?
Well, Mission Unusual is this initiative where we're trying to take our work to prepare the planet and its cities for Christ's soon return.
So it's really global mission.
Yes, exactly. And we're wanting to expand to see how we can start new groups of believers, whether that's going to be in church planting or through centers of influence, or we're truly wanting to have total member involvement with our students who will come and help through our Adventist volunteer services, and kind of a comprehensive plan to then actually make disciples.
So Doug, I know that you have spent quite a bit of time in Tokyo. I know that Greg Whitsett from our Center for East Asian Religions has spent time there. What role are the global mission centers playing in Tokyo?
Well, what we're doing is we're trying to support the initiative and the ideas that the Japanese leadership have. And so in this situation, we're coming in and trying to support that local initiative, whether it's through resources, whether it's through finances, thanks to our donors' mission offerings, as well as then to find out some structural ways of how we can align the entire Adventist family to support what's happening on the streets there of Tokyo.
Right, so what we're talking about is, let's do a team effort here.
That's right.
Let's have Adventist volunteers, let's have some missionaries,
That's
let's have global mission pioneers, and all come together with this one goal to build the church up in this city.
That's correct, yeah. That's why it's so unusual, is because imagine the Adventist family working together, aligning its resources, imagination, and that horsepower of truly total member involvement. For what purpose? It is for mission to the cities, and in this case, it's the world's largest city.
Now, you've met with the pastors, you've talked with some of the young people. What is the feeling there about this initiative?
I think that there is a energy and a excitement that they're seeing what God can do. You remember the time when Elisha was surrounded there in the city, and his servant was just focusing on the enemy army. And so I see that right now through this the last several years, that not only we as the leaders at the General Conference, but also the Japanese and in the past, and their team at the division, they're starting to see, like Elisha did, through eyes of faith, to see actually that God has a plan for that great city. God has a plan for us to expand the kingdom and to prepare many more disciples there with the Japanese background who are ready for Christ's soon return.
So you mentioned that each Adventist church at the moment in Tokyo has a mission field of 2 million people.
That's correct.
So the goal of Mission Unusual is to plant churches. How many do we want to plant?
Well, right now, it's exciting that the local leadership has a vision to actually start a church planting movement. And so we're in the process of mentoring young adults, whether they're going to be a professional or a student, to actually become disciple makers and to actually start and mentor other disciples who will start other new groups of believers. And so we're wanting to start a movement.
Yeah, and I love to hear that. because we're not talking about static, we're just going to try to fill up existing churches, which is, we want to do that, but we want to multiply this.
Amen. Amen.
We want to see God's kingdom expanding rapidly.
That's right.
So what are the good signs that are happening at the moment?
Well, right now we've seen that we had a recent, over the last several years, we've been working on, starting with the Gideon's Band of, about 12 Japanese pastors, to then who they will then start mentoring others. And so we're in that process of encouraging that vision for discipling a church planting movement. So we've also seen how God is working on the hearts of the people, where we've had recent public evangelistic meetings where people have come to Christ. I remember one story from Osaka where there was a man, God actually gave this man a dream. And through that dream, he was able to come into contact with our Adventist family, and he joined the Adventist movement as a result of having a dream, and our team there in the city, doing a campaign. And so we're also see other signs where we have our entrepreneurs preparing to say, how are they going to set up in the world's largest city, one of the places where even a square meter of real estate is over $1 million. So how are we going to have centers of influence in that great city as well? So we see that different parts of our Adventist family working together, and that's what I'm excited about this Mission Unusual, is the opportunities that this has for us.
Wonderful. Thanks, Doug, for sharing with us. Viewers at home, this is really exciting. This is an opportunity to work under the guidance of the Holy Spirit to build up God's kingdom in the book of Jonah. God finishes that book by saying, should I not be concerned about this great city? And we're concerned about Japan. And already donors have been stepping up. We are pledging from Global Mission to put millions of dollars into this project, into people, not just into buildings, but into people who will make a difference for God's kingdom. And thank you for your continuing support. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Tokyo. In a big city like this, you see the high-rises, you see the apartment blocks and the commercial buildings and the busy streets, and then you turn a corner and you come across a scene like this, which is, at least for me, surprising to see riverboats in the heart of the city. Anyway, next up we travel to Brazil, to Brasilia, to meet a Waldensian student.
Hi, my guest today is a bit unusual. Not because he's unusual, he's an ordinary person, but he's doing extraordinary things with God's help for mission. So we're not going to tell you what his name is, we're not going to show you his face or where he was serving. But I think you'll find this a very interesting interview, so we're just going to go for a little walk here. So thanks for joining us. Now we're working in a country that we call a closed country. Some people may not know what that means. What does a closed country mean?
So we have some so-called closed countries in the world that, in that case, they have very strict regulations on religions and on religious work. So that's why we cannot act as a normal religious worshiper or worker as on most of our Western countries.
So in these countries, they don't allow religious workers to come in, and there are restrictions on what people can do there. So you were going into this country. How did you feel before you went in? I mean, were you scared? I mean, what is that feeling of, I'm gonna go?
Yeah.
What motivates that?
Yeah, I think the biggest motivation is knowing that you are accepting a call from God, and another good thing is to know that there are many other missionaries already working there. So if I know that many people are already there working and living with God in such difficult circumstances, God tells me that I can do that also.
Okay. And there's a term that we call that. One is a tent maker, and another one is what we call a Waldensian student, where somebody goes into a country for a different purpose, and they have a legitimate reason to be there, but because they're a Christian, they are letting their lives be the witness. Now, what was it like? Do you have any stories you can share about your experiences there? Being careful, of course. Is it possible, or?
Yes, I can try to remember some stories. Like as a Valdensian missionary, like almost all the Christian missionaries in that country, I entered as a student of the language, so I could get the visa and be there legally. And so in a place where religion and religious people are treated like differently, we need to act differently, and we know that we can find sometimes some difficult situations on how to act. And one day I found it was a bittersweet situation, a bittersweet feeling, because I was talking to a teacher, and of course I was there to connect with all kinds of people, and I was trying to connect with that guy that seemed to like me, and he started to show some interest on religion. But the bittersweet feeling came when one day, when he already knew that I was a Christian, we were talking through the hallway after a class, and he started to show really enthusiasm about religion and knowing the Bible. So, but he, ignoring that as a Christian, we need to, act under cover. He didn't know that we should not, I should hide about my religion. So inside a secular university, talking about religion could be very risky. So inside me, I was really excited that my local teacher was excited about knowing a Christian and having access to the Bible and knowing more about the Bible. But at the same time, I was really, you're
a bit worried.
Yeah, I was really worried because many other employees of the place and other students were passing by. So that situation could be very risky at the same time.
Yeah. I like what you're saying, though, because Ellen White talks about Christ's method. How did Jesus do his ministry? And one of the first things she says he did is he mingled. And, first of all, you needed to be in that country to mingle.
Yeah.
You have a real reason to be there, and you're meeting and interacting with people every day, and they see your life and they begin to sometimes ask questions. Now, in terms of, well, first, how long were you there?
I stayed there for 1 year.
For 1 year, okay. Yeah. And then, in terms of working in the closed countries, and doing that type of ministry, you're constantly wondering, I guess, how much you can say, who's watching, and things like that. How do you cope with that, and maybe what kind of reliance does prayer have when you're in that kind of situation?
Yeah, I think sometimes you can rely only on prayer, because we know that we are watched by people, by the government, and by the police maybe, but it's never possible for you to know how much you are watched. So we try to be prudent, we try to avoid situations that could bring some risks to us and to the gospel and to other missionaries. So, but at the same time, we are there to work. We are there to bring the gospel to those people. So sometimes, you know that you will need to talk about something that is illegal. You cannot proselytize. I cannot give you not even a pamphlet, a booklet on the streets that is illegal. So it's not easy for you to know how far I can go on talking or about the gospel, about Jesus, and how to balance the risks, But in the end, doing missionary work in a closed country will always bring you risks. And that's why we always rely on prayer above all, because you cannot avoid that.
Now, when you're talking about the world today, 1/3 of the world is Christian, 2/3 of the world is not, and some of those we cannot openly go in, and yet we have the gospel commission to share the gospel of the entire world. What advice would you give to somebody who's considering any kind of mission service, whether it is, more traditional or a volunteer or in a closed country?
So in a closed country, if you feel called to go there, as we already mentioned, you will need to rely on prayer. You will need to be sure that God is calling you there.
And I like that. God is calling you. Pray and ask God, what do you want me to do? And if he calls you to some place like that, then you have to prayerfully consider whether you will answer. And we're out of time, but thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. For Mission 360, I'm Rick Kajura, and now back to Gary Krause.
Next up, we travel to Romania to visit a unique church plant.
When a friend asked me for a ride, something impressed me that I should bring my family along. While we were driving, a strong storm started that caused our wooden church building to collapse on top of my house. We thanked God that although our new Adventist church collapsed, by God's protection, no one was harmed. Just a few years ago, I was not an Adventist. I lived in an older house on this property that sits at the main intersection in town. In my community, there were some who struggled to find a hot meal in the winter. When Adventists first came, they brought food and compassion. A warm bowl of soup can be the perfect way into someone's heart. They parked a shipping container in my yard where they could serve food and connect with our people. Many of us felt they sincerely cared, so we listened to Bible stories that were filled with hope. Through their loving service, this group of Adventists won our hearts, and we trusted them. In time, some of us were baptized, and we built a wooden church next to my house. This is my house, where the church plant activities happened over the last 10 years. This is the foundation for the church we wanted to build. Unfortunately, it didn't last because it was destroyed during the storm. Over there, we had a shipping container. From it, we served hot meals during the winter for 4 to 5 years. In the beginning, most of the attendees were not Adventists. This is still somewhat true today. Only about half of the people who come for Sabbath services are baptized members. The other half come because they have seen how Seventh-day Adventists are committed to the peace and well-being of this community. This active church also connects with young minds. Every week, the church takes in some 200 children for after-school care and tutoring. The children are served a daily meal. Many parents and children benefit from this free service provided by volunteers from the church and from the community.
The children are doing better in school because of the activities of this church. The government school principal has expressed his gratitude to the Adventist Church, even at public events.
We hope everyone will come to know God. We make public invitations for those who want to know more about us. We organize small groups to discuss the Bible with those who are interested. I like these activities. We are following Jesus' method. We're building relationships, identifying needs, and trying to help people. Then we're guiding them to God.
I'm a builder by profession, and after the wooden church collapsed, we dreamed of building God a new house for worship. Miraculously, God intervened to give us the land and the funds. Currently, 20 people are studying the Bible, and 2 of them are ready for baptism. We work hard to help those in need. In my spare time, I assist the less privileged to have their own house. I hope someday they will see the love of God through me, as we saw God's love through the Adventists. I want to thank the volunteer pioneers and church planters who came here.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's program, and I hope that you've been inspired and challenged by our 360-degree view of mission around the world. We've traveled to the hard-to-reach areas of the Amazon. We've seen church planting in Romania. We've looked at mission right here in Tokyo. And around the world today, we face many, many mission challenges. The urban cities such as Tokyo loom large in more ways than one. But I want to thank you so much for your continuing support of Adventist Mission. Every time you pray for mission, every time you give a donation to Global Mission or give your mission offerings, you are making a difference. Thank you for your personal involvement. And I hope that you can find ways to share the good news of Adventist Mission with your friends, your family, with people at church. If you want to learn more about Adventist Mission, you can always go to adventistmission.org. Well, for Adventist Mission, I'm Gary Krause, and I hope that you can join me next time right here on Mission 360.